I want to bring in Brian Andrews, who is a TMZ producer who's been covering the case. And Brian has just seen you publicly. Brian, lay it out.
Well, I sat behind Garagos. He was on the in the gallery on the pew that they had set up for people associated with the defense. I saw Mark and his daughter down in the cafeteria on the 8th floor. By the way, Mark likes to drink, it looks like Perrier water or sparkling water. Mark also was the center of attention in the 8th floor cafeteria during lunch, where the entire defense team had taken over the middle of the room, 2 tables. All of them were on their phones and chitting and chatting. And I think one of my favorite stories is, Mark Garagos is a rock star. And when he showed up, he took over a conference room that they had right at the entry to the courthouse, to the courtroom doors. And on Wednesday morning, Garagos and other members of the defense group tried to get in. And the court security officer said, "I'm sorry, the door's locked. You're going to have to talk to the judge's assistant." And so Garagos and his entourage were literally stuck in the gallery benches with the rest of us for the rest of the day on Wednesday.
Brian, come back in. My understanding of the jury pool was a lot of them seemed to want to get on the jury, that they wanted to be in on this case. That they, oh yeah, I can be objective even if I had an opinion. They seem to want to be there, and if they want to be there and they're in for a penny, they're in for a pound.
Well, there was one guy who was disqualified because he actually talked about TMZ. And he says his wife is on the app all day long and that there was really no way he could avoid it. But he said, "Your Honor, I think I could be fair and impartial." And when he left the room, Agnifilo said, "I don't think so." So
they want to be on the jury. So if they want to be on the jury and it's 8 or 9 weeks, Nancy, O.J. Simpson was 9 months. I get it. A lot of people don't want to do it. But if you don't do it, I mean, this jury is going to be poisoned with opinions, and it's worse because it's not televised.
Okay,
because the person's...
Let me jog your memory to when you were...
Let me just bring Brian Andrews in. He's our producer who's in the courtroom. Brian, my understanding is there were other people covering this who were wondering the same thing about all the domestic violence.
Well, it seems that was their main show. They were just hoping to make him look as awful as he possibly could in front of this New York jury. And I'll tell you, watching the jurors and their reactions in the beginning yesterday, they were riveted to what Cassie was saying, and she was stunning. I mean, she walked in, and all eyes were on her. You could not help but have your heart broken as she talked about her love for Diddy through the years, and that she'd do anything. But that the drugs and the possessive nature of it, and just the crazy nature of flying all over the world.
I want to get into the domestic violence, because you and I had a discussion about this, that people were wondering about why the focus on that so much, where they were wondering how it connected.
Well, I think people were wondering why they started this way. I mean, they're trying to prove federal cases, but a lot of the people who have been in the courtroom with me are thinking they're just trying to paint Diddy with the ugliest brush they can.
Good grief, what is wrong with you people? Haven't you seen Mission Impossible?
So, Brian, everybody wants to know, what was Cassie like on the stand? I mean, was she emotional? Did she look at Diddy? What was it like watching her?
Laser focused as she walked in. She did not look at him. She went straight to the witness stand. But I remember on her second day of testimony, Diddy looked at her when she came in from the lunch break, up and down like this. And then during her testimony, especially on some of that really salacious material, Diddy was glaring at her. She was out of gas by the end of day 2. You could tell she was spent. But on her, towards the end of the government's, I'm sorry, when we go to the cross-examination, she was a different woman. She walked in revitalized. She was very casual. But we started noticing, at least on Thursday, where she would be asked questions by the defense, and it would be, well, I don't know, I can't remember, that was such a long time ago, maybe. She also used upspeak. Well, maybe it was like this. Maybe it was like, so it was like, is she sure of her answer, or is she unsure of her answer? The jurors looked at her. They paid very close attention. Particularly, I noticed the female jurors paying very close attention. One of the male jurors, I saw him towards the end of the day, and he was yawning. He covered his mouth. Another juror on the back row was kind of in the chair like this, because the government, I'm sorry, the defense in their cross, very tedious in getting into the nitty gritty of each one of these experiences and what do you remember, and down to I went to Dwayne Reed to buy supplies. It's a lot. And her husband is on row number 2, along with her brother, watching all of this, listening to this sexual history. I mean, that's his wife. And the stuff that she's talking about would curl your hair.
How was Diddy? How was Diddy responding to it?
Diddy has been glaring at her. We also see Diddy look back a lot, and that might be because the clock for the courtroom is right over the gallery where the media is sitting, and they have us kind of blocked off. But I will tell you, he has been gazing at her intently. He's been taking notes. I watched during the cross-examinations, he wrote down a note when they were talking about drugs, and he passed it all the way up to Estevao. And Estevao said, well, would you call us high partners? And she was referring to their drug use. And she says, yeah, I might call it that. That's what we called it. So Diddy's very much involved in sliding questions up to the defense to ask Cassie.
Our TMZ producer, Brian Andrews, was in the courtroom. How did the jury respond to Hughes?
Well, based on what I saw, Harvey, they started to zone out towards the end of it, especially when the defense went in and they said, hey, isn't it true that you're making $6,000 for being here today and you charge $600 an hour? And then the defense went into the fact that she was actually training other people how to be an expert witness, and that basically she was in the bag for the government, that she had been consulting the government on how they were going to file certain pleadings in the Diddy case. So by the time they were done with her, the good doctor kind of left with her head held high, but a lot of people were kind of like,
Brian, what did the jury think about Regina Ventura?
I can only tell you what their faces registered. And it was a typical New York moment. You know, these New Yorkers have seen everything. Nothing phases them. They watched her walk in, and then they watched her walk out. It was very short. And what was very interesting was the whole issue of the 20 grand wire, because the defense pulled it out in the testimony that the money, days later, went right back into their account. So I think they felt bad for her, honestly. They looked at her with the glance you would give a woman whose child has just been on the witness stand for a couple of days talking about the most intimate, most horrible parts of her life. So I think they appreciated hearing from Mom, but I don't know if it swayed them one way or the other.
Brian, come in. How did Dawn Richard do in the stand?
I was sitting there on the third row. Look, she walked in, stunning. She was ready for battle, and then she came back for her next day. And when Nicole Westmoreland from Team Diddy got up, as I've said before, she ate Dawn's lunch. This was the first time we had heard Westmoreland open her mouth in court. She was powerful. She was mighty. She was on the attack. She was all business, and she was going to town in very testy exchanges. Attack issue number 1 was the frying pan, because Dawn Richard had testified, well, Diddy hit her with the frying pan. But on October 31st of 24, when she was meeting with prosecutors, she told the prosecutors, I don't know if it was hitting. I think he attempted to hit her. And then Nicole Westmoreland went to town on that. And she said, well, I don't recall. Is it hard for you to keep your story the same? Asked Westmoreland. Well, I'm telling it to the best of my recollection, said Dawn. And then Nicole comes in. Well, you've had 4 different recollections. And this went on and on. And I'm watching the jury. And the ladies on one of the rows in the jury row are going like this. I mean, it was resonating. But it all kind of came to a head toward the end of the cross when Nicole was asking about the civil litigation that Cassie, right after Cassie had dropped her suit, Dawn Richard had dropped her suit. And the question was, hey, you should have gone to the cops. Why did you go to a civil attorney? And then it went on, and these are my notes. I can't wait to put these in a frame when I get back to Florida. But basically, it was, why were you suing? Well, I was hoping for justice, said Dawn. And then Nicole said, no, you were hoping for money. And then this is really good. Dawn says, well, I wanted to be made whole. I wanted to be compensated for the work that I did. This is according to the suit that she had filed. And then Nicole says, compensation means money, right?
Okay, well, look.
And Dawn says yes, and
Joe,
that was no more questions, Your Honor.
Brian is our TMZ producer who's been in the courtroom. To me, I feel like the prosecution's hopscotching between the domestic violence against various people and the threats against individuals from, the Kid Cudi or the Capricorn testimony about racketeering. That Mia, to me, should have gone right after Cassie, because that's kind of the picture they're painting with that kind of sexual abuse. But it feels like the prosecution is just going all over the place and the story's fragmented.
Well, Maureen Comey had said in court that there were scheduling issues and they had to fly people across the country to get them here back and forth. But you're right, Harvey. It does feel like they're all over the place. But in the latest batch of testimony on Mia, it was heartbreaking. I mean, here is this woman on the stand. She's got a tissue in one hand. Her makeup is running down her face. She can barely speak. She's talking about what she called the most shameful thing of my life. And she's whispering as she's getting out the fact of she was forced to have oral sex. I mean, the question, she couldn't even say the word penis. The prosecutor had to say, "Did you put Mr. Combs' penis in your mouth?" Yes, she whispered. It was grueling. It was heartbreaking. And the jury, I'm sitting there looking at him, New York poker face, no reaction.
Okay, so.
But I looked over at Diddy as all this is happening, and he kind of looks down, and we saw him do this. And then he looked at the jury. So it was very, very heavy.
So, Brian, on Friday, the prosecution actually was the one that raised this, that Mia got a settlement from Diddy of several $100,000. She had asked for $10 million, and they had a private mediation for this. And in that mediation, she never brought up sexual assault or rape. And it seems the prosecution tried to get in front of this so the defense wouldn't raise it. But the intimation here is clear that what the prosecutors are worried about is that the jury might believe that the sexual assault claims were made up after the fact. She says it's something she never even wanted to deal with, which is why she never mentioned it in the mediation. How was that received?
Well, in the courtroom, everybody was surprised that the ask was such a big number, $10 million. But the result, once the attorneys got their cut, whittled down to a little over $200,000. And she had said in court that she planned to take the information on the sexual abuse to her grave. It's not something she ever wanted to talk about. It was such an interesting day on Friday as we were looking through Mia's social media history, what she was posting on her Instagram feed way back when, a very smiling, happy, proud time to be associated with Sean Combs, the exact same time that Brian Steele contended she was telling the jury that she was living in terror.
Brian, what I'm wondering is this. We know that the Chrisley's daughter was in no small part responsible for their pardon by speaking at the Republican convention, by, supporting Trump and wearing a MAGA hat. Would you be surprised if you start seeing Diddy supporters outside that courthouse wearing MAGA hats and maybe even relatives of Sean Combs?
It depends. Do they want to do that calculation? His sons show up to court wearing Fendi and designer goods. I doubt you would ever see them wearing a MAGA hat. But we've seen that the family is a very tight-knit family. They're going to do what they have to do to make sure they represent Diddy. Wait a second, Ashley, let me give you a different perspective. As you know, I am in the courtroom every day for TMZ, and I see this differently. This was a big win for the defense, as Diddy defense attorney Nicole Westmoreland was able to show by putting up the exhibit that showed the metadata, the map, the location where Bono was when she sent that photo, and then whip up a receipt from the Trump Hotel in New York showing that Frank Black, a.k.a. Diddy, was ordering room service and saying you can't be in two places at the same time. Something isn't right here. I think it was a win for the defense.
Ryan, what was the jury's reaction to what they heard this week?
Well, the real time to take the temperature is when the white noise fills the courtroom and they're having a sidebar, because that's when you see the jurors start to interact with each other. And Armand and I are sitting in different sides of the courtroom, but we're looking at them, and some of them are raising their eyebrows, others are reacting. The judge has said, don't talk about the case, but are they talking about the Mets? Are they talking about, traffic in Midtown Manhattan? No, they're probably talking about what they have just seen while they're killing time on these sidebars. But even during Bonna's testimony, and even before that, when they were playing the video from the Intercontinental, all of these jurors had their sights focused on the monitors, and they were watching like this. I don't know, Armand, maybe you saw it as well. They were keenly keyed in on what they were seeing, especially as Diddy was being violent toward Cassie. Diddy almost got kicked out of the courtroom towards the end of the week, and that's because the judge had spotted him nodding, winking, and smiling at members of the jury. The judge told Mark Agnifilo for his client to cut it out, or there would be serious repercussions, including possibly having Diddy removed. Meantime, we're all talking about Jane and her appearance on the witness stand. It was very clear that she fell in love very quickly with Diddy, that he swept her off of her feet, was paying for her life on both coasts of the United States, flying her all over down to the islands for exotic vacations, that she initially found the hotel nights or rendezvous with these escorts to be taboo, that was enjoyable. But that quickly deteriorated, and she was done with it. In fact, she not only told Diddy verbally, but she sent him letters and texts to that effect that she did not want to be having sex with other men. Now, another interesting moment from Jane's testimony is where she talked about Diddy wanting to have her nipples pierced at the end of 2022. He said that he would really find that to be a turn on, that he wanted that on his girl. And she actually testified that Christina Coram, his assistant, is the one who made the appointment for the piercing in Los Angeles. She went on to say that it felt like, quote, a rodent bit her on the nipples really hard. She says they ended up getting snagged on the lingerie. They bled and they got infected. It was a horrible experience. But Diddy was insistent that she use these piercings, saying at one point to her, "Where are my piercings?" as if he owned them. The other thing we watched is that she was recounting the names and faces of the men that she was with. She recalled them as entertainers at hotel nights. You'll remember that Cassie referred to them as freak-offs. In Jane's world, they were called hotel nights. And she identified to the jury at least 15 freeze frames from very salacious porn videos recorded by Diddy of her sexual encounters. She testified that she felt she was in love, that she was something special, that Diddy was her man. But she said she pretty much figured out that Diddy didn't feel the same way, and it was a little more disposable. Clearly, Diddy was involved with many other women at the time.
Brian, what was the reaction like when this jury came out with a verdict that a lot of people did not see coming? A lot of people, and I will say myself included, thought he was going to go down on more charges than he did.
There was a lot of surprise, Harvey. I'm here on the backside of the courthouse right now. It's still a mob scene out front where people are like, wow, they didn't get him on the main counts, but they got him on the prostitution. We saw Doug Wigdor, who was representing Cassie, leave court shortly after the verdict. And he actually sent a letter to the judge making sure on behalf of his client, saying that Cassie wants Diddy to not come out, no bond. We also had a letter come in from Deontay Nash, who testified, saying he is scared for his safety if Diddy were to get out. And as you know, Diddy's bond has been denied, and he's going to remain in the MDC until this hearing, as you and Charles have mentioned. It looks like they're going to expedite it. We could know a little bit more as we get into the next 2 weeks. But yeah, the overall atmosphere here is just wow. Lots of twists and turns.
Okay.